Hi, Washington Township staff. My name is Catherine Carey. I'm the Director of Assessment, Data Technology, Registration, and School Community Outreach. Our Superintendent, Mr. Bollendorf, and I are recording this video especially for staff today to answer some questions surrounding our return to the hybrid instructional model. So Mr. Bollendorf hopes to present to you some helpful information in terms of decision making and the data and statistics that we are using and we look at to make our decisions and determinations. So Joe, would you like to get started with a summary?
Yes, thank you, Kathy. And hello, everybody. It's taken some time. The last couple of days have been really busy, and I apologize that I couldn't get this video out sooner to help perhaps answer some questions in your mind or calm some fears that some of you may have. I wanted to make you aware that on Monday late afternoon, I met with the WTEA Executive Board, who carried forward many of the questions that many of our staff members had in relation to the decisions to go back to the hybrid schedule, given the circumstances that we find ourselves in, and what matrices, what data, what information we're getting to help us navigate and make these decisions. And so I wanted to kind of take folks through that as I did the executive board, and it was in that meeting that the executive board encouraged me to put this together in a video, because I tried to explain a lot of this in the letter that I sent home to everybody on Friday, and the written word sometimes, absent of tone, absent of the ability to respond to certain things, sometimes leads to more questions as opposed to providing answers. So I'm hoping that this video will answer some of those questions and give folks a better sense of what we're utilizing to make these decisions, who we're conferring with, and where we are in terms of what our hopes are moving forward. So with that, I think I can jump right into some of those things. I kind of fault myself a little bit because back in November, we had been using the activity report that the NJDOH puts out each week. It typically comes out at different points in time on a Thursday, and it's reflective of 7 days of collected data from the previous week. So as of the recording of this video, the last report that we've gotten was for the week ending on January 2nd, which came out last Thursday. So it seems that, you're getting information that's a week old. It's really not really specific to what may be going on at the moment. And we realize that with this COVID situation, things can change very rapidly. So back in November, I happened upon a website called COVID Act Now, and I liked it. I liked it because it was updating information regularly each day. And at that time, the numbers were fairly consistent. There was really only one data point that's the same, and that's the daily case rate. The other data points that the health department was using and COVID Act Now was focusing on were not the same. But as we track that and move forward in time, those numbers still remain fairly consistent until we started getting around right after the holidays. And I started noticing a tremendous gap between the reporting in the COVID Act Now website and what I was getting from the Department of Health. And obviously that concerned me. So I started digging into this more deeply. And when I say differentiation, in that January 2nd report, as an example, it was 42% daily positivity rate in the DOH. And on the COVID Act Now, when I was looking at it, got as high as 88%. And that was alarming because they were throwing us in the severe category. So how COVID Act Now and how the DOH works and tabulates and gathers data turns out to be very different. And as best as I could surmise in doing my investigation, talking to the DOH, talking to looking at some reports from some local statisticians, it would appear that some large data dumps were happening that were from tests from time ago, from back in the holidays, being dumped more recently into the system. And it makes it appear that daily case rates are, much higher than they are, but they're not daily case rates reflective of positive test taking on that day, because old data, the DOH is gleaning that data and they're separating it out. And what we're seeing in the DOH data are actual positive tests from the day in which they were deemed positive. So that's a more accurate measure of the growth and or decline of daily case rates than what we're seeing on COVID Act now, which is more of an all-encompassing raw data information source. So I realized that it really was not the kind of accurate data, but more importantly, it's not the data by which the Department of Health is going to utilize to make decisions. They're utilizing the data that they're taking and they're separating and that they're putting together to make determinations as whether or not we're in the green phase, the yellow phase, the orange phase, or the red phase. We have been in the orange phase since mid-November. And I don't know how much longer we'll be there, but what's keeping us in the orange phase is the daily positivity rate, which across the state remains over 25. And as long as it remains over 25%, it will get a red rating. And that combined with the other two data points, which have varied from yellow to orange, gives us a Cali score of 3. And that Cali score of 3 maintains us in the orange phase. That is not a phase level by which the Department of Health is going to be shutting our schools down. So why did we close schools at the end of November and early December moving forward? Well, we're at that point where literally schools would be closed and pivoting to remote full districts for essentially 2 reasons. One, you can't staff your buildings because you have too many people that are quarantining for one reason or another, whether they've been deemed a close contact, whether they're living in a household with somebody who has COVID, or whether they've acquired COVID themselves, or are in fact symptomatic and have to quarantine because they're waiting on a test that's pending. That has ratcheted up the numbers of people while in the orange phase that have to quarantine just simply because they're close contacts of somebody who's symptomatic versus somebody who actually tested positive has been a real game changer. And in education, they still have to quarantine for up to 14 days. So that has impacted our ability to, at times, staff our buildings. Back in December, I had 4 buildings that I could not open. And I also had a major issue with folks that were unable to work in my transportation department, which was going to make it nearly impossible for me to bus our kids to school. And that's the reason why I determined that we had to pivot to all remote and do a district-wide shutdown, which amounted for 3 additional weeks, the 2 weeks before the winter break and the week after. Since that time, and in the week leading up to this past weekend when the decision was made, our staffing configurations were very good, very good. And they continued to remain good up into the beginning of this week. And we're dealing with some uptick. And as at the time of this message, you are aware that I had to pivot to remote for at least 2 days at the high school, again, mainly dealing with staffing issues, where we had a blossom of staff needing to quarantine for a variety of reasons, that came clear to us late Wednesday afternoon. So I'm recording this on Thursday, and the high school's in that pivot. So, but the building is now open. The only time the building is going to shut down is if the Department of Health closes us and or procedurally, based on the Department of Health guidelines, we determine we have to shut a building down. And we've done that before. That would be, for an example, we had 2 positive cases, whether they be staff or students, and those we couldn't trace where the cause of the infection came from. So then it becomes possible that within 14 days, 2 possible cases that we can't trace, we have to close the building down because it's possible that the transmission happened in the building and we need to be careful. In that case, that's when that whole building would shift to full remote. But currently right now, it's critically important that we keep our buildings open, that our teachers are reporting the work, because there are certain aspects of programming, like our self-contained students, our cohort C students, that really are not conducive to remote education. And we need to bring those kids into the building. And the only way I can do that is by keeping our buildings open, keeping our staff working, keeping our aides coming and reporting the work. And that provides an opportunity for those kids, as long as I have the staff, to be able to continue to come physically to school and receive their education. So, ideally, I'm able to staff in multiple ways through substitutes, through coverages, the ability to staff our buildings and keep all of our hybrid learners, whether they be cohort A or B, coming into our buildings on a regular basis. Our kids need it. It's critically important. We are mandated by the state to provide both a live learning and a hybrid option. Live learning and a remote option. We don't really have a choice. The only way we flip to a remote is if we have a legitimate health and safety concern. And if I can't staff a building and properly provide for my children from a supervision standpoint, then obviously I have to pivot to remote for most of that building in order to, for the safety and supervision of those students. So outside of those procedural things that are already in the handbook, the road back by the Department of Health and/or a complete shutdown by the Department of Health, if that Cali score that I referenced earlier ever went to a 4, then we would be completely shut down, and that would be the entire region. Wherever any one region became a 4, putting them in the red, then that region would have to pivot to full remote for all of their students. And we're not close to approaching that because there are 3 data points. The one data point we've surpassed for some time, and that is the daily case average. But the other 2 data points, we have not come close to the line of demarcation that would throw us from the yellow or orange phase into the red phase. If any one of those 2 were able to breach that number, then we would have 2 data points being scored as a 4, and that would throw our entire Cali score into a 4, and that would lead to a closure of the district and every district that was in our region. We are in the Southwest region, which is Salem County, Camden County, and Gloucester County. So it's an average of all those counties together to help us to reach our score. I had our department take down the web page for COVID Act Now because I didn't want that to be there, leading people to the same level of confusion that it would absolutely lead anybody to looking at. So obviously COVID Act Now is still out there. It's something anybody can look up and get to. But I didn't want to have it on our website and continue to have that kind of confusion out there for our folks. I wanted them to have access to the data that I know is being utilized to make these decisions. So what we put up there in its place was the Department of Health dashboard, which gives real-time information on positive cases by county. And a variety of other information that you can have access through our website, which I think is more consistent with the activity reports that we get weekly, and more really aligned with the decision making on the part of the Department of Health. I do want our staff to know that I talk regularly with the Department of Health. I have them on speed dial. I have them on my cell phone. They answer my text message. Whenever I have questions or concerns, I reach out to them and I use them as an active resource for decision making. They've been unbelievable. Our nurses in our schools have been an incredible lifeline in helping to make these decisions as it relates to the safety of our staff. On that note, and I realize now I'm not giving Kathy any chance to ask me any specific questions because I'm just kind of going at it, but we've had approximately 350 cases of COVID in our buildings. In fact, I'll give you the exact number. I don't want to. As of yesterday, we put a report out every single day to the county. And as of yesterday, just give me 1 second. I opened up the wrong. I'm not pulling it up. I'm just going to look at the number and tell you. As of yesterday, at the end of the day, we have had a cumulative number of 345 cases in the Washington Township School District since the beginning of the school year. 98 of those cases have been staff members, and 247 of them have been students. Of that number, we have only 5 known cases of transmission within our buildings. 5. They all happened in the fall. 4 of them were staff members. 1 of them was a student. And in every single case, social distancing was not in place. The data would indicate that being in school, us exercising the 6-foot spacing, the hybrid schedule, the wearing a face mask, and the washing of our hands has been an absolute appropriate measure to guard us against infection in our school buildings. The data supports that. And that's not just in Washington Township, that's across the state, and that's across the country. There are plenty of reports that are out there online that folks can access looking at in-school transmission, which is so significantly low that it's one of the places where any one of us can go. I mean, every single person has to live. They've got to go to the supermarket. They've got to go to various places. School is one of those few places where 6-foot social distancing, face mask wearing by everybody, consistent hand washing is going on a regular basis. And we believe that our schools are amongst the safest places that you can be. And our data would support that, and we would hope to continue that. Some have asked, well, we're on the verge of the vaccine. Why don't we just wait to be vaccinated before we reopen our schools? I did address this in my letter, but the truth of the matter is that optimistically, the first dose may be administered to our staff at the beginning of February at some point in time. And then there's a 28-day waiting period if, in fact, what we're given is Moderna, and which would mean that the second dose wouldn't be administered till sometime till early March. So that's a good deal away from us right now. And I could not keep my self-contained kids especially out, and quite frankly, any of our hybrid kids who need it. The overwhelming majority of our students, particularly at the elementary level, are taking advantage of the hybrid schedule. They're here. I know it's in lesser numbers at the middle school and lesser numbers at the high school, but across the school district, 70% of our students still are registered as hybrid learners. 75% of those students are attending at the elementary level, 65% are attending at the middle level, and 59% at the high school level. And they're the numbers. That's what we're seeing. We are trying to focus more on those numbers because we do realize that we do have a population of kids, particularly at the high school level, that are being listed as hybrid learners, but are perhaps only showing up in the remote. So we're trying to refine that number, but that's the last number that we have as it relates to that. So folks have asked, who are we consulting with? We're consulting with the Department of Health. I consult every Tuesday with my colleagues in Gloucester County. As of right now, every single district in Gloucester County has either opened already, opened on the 11th, or will open on the 19th. Which is next Tuesday. There are 27 school districts in Gloucester County. All but 8 are open as of this moment. The other 8 planning to open on Tuesday. So Gloucester County is opened and returned to the hybrid. We are not alone in that endeavor, and I felt confident that reopening our schools and returning to the hybrid based on all that accumulated data, the information, the time spent in trying to make a decision that I believed and my team believed was in the best interest of our kids and in the best interest of health and safety for all involved, was to reopen our schools on Monday. And I realize that not everybody agrees with that. I realize that. I realize that there's fear in the hearts of a lot of you. I get the emails from you, and I appreciate the kindness and the respect that all of you display in those emails, but your desire to want to share your concerns with me is much appreciated. I understand all of that. So I know it's not an envious position to be in this chair and make these decisions. But believe me when I tell you that I spend countless hours researching data, talking to people, trying to accumulate as much information as humanly possible in making these decisions. They're not made lightly, they're not made in the vacuum, and they're not made without attention to detail and understanding of what the numbers mean. So I hope in some way my words calm fears. If they raise additional questions, I'm perfectly happy to speak with you, to answer your emails. I know that a bunch of you emailed me over the weekend and I didn't get back to you. Essentially, that's why I took the meeting with the union to answer those questions. And this just doesn't, just play to just our teachers. This is for our support staff, all of our folks that are involved in this process. This applies to all of you. So I don't know if I left anything out, Kath, if I left a question for you to answer.
No, I checked them all off, Joe. You did a good job.
I live and eat this every single day. It never leaves my mind. I'm constantly on my computer looking and talking and researching in order to help me make the very best decisions for all involved. I do appreciate deeply the seriousness of which you take your responsibilities and what it is that you do each and every day. I know it's sometimes, particularly when you're in a high school classroom and 2 or 3 kids are sitting in your room and you wonder, why am I doing this? The answer is that, it still matters. It makes a difference. This is why we all signed up to be educators, because we're in a position to be those difference makers and to do what's right by our kids. And right now we're being called upon to do that. And I know it's not easy, but it's still in my heart the right thing to do. And I appreciate you doing that for all of those reasons.
Thank you, Joe. And I just want to remind our staff that we will continue to post up-to-date information as much as possible on our splash page, as well as our reopening website. And if people have questions, in addition to emailing you or their leadership, staff can avail themselves to the COVID-19 info at WTPS.org. We are still monitoring that, and we'll get your questions to the right people. So thank you. Thank you for your time.